Hello, welcome to Cloud Learning channel. In this module, we will learn how to copy data from AWS S3 bucket into Azure ADLS using Azure Synapse Studio. So we did using ADF, we copy data from AWS into Azure Blob using ADF in earlier modules an year back. Microsoft introduced a Synapse Studio a few months back. So I will show you in this module how to copy that data from AWS S3 into Azure ADLS Gen 2 account. So in this module, we will learn how to create a bucket in AWS and how to load files into AWS S3 bucket, and how do we create users and assign the access key and the secret. And we will use the same keys in Azure Synapse Studio to authenticate uh, to Amazon S3 and bring the files into ADLS. And also, we will learn how to deploy Synapse Workspace in Azure, and how we can open Synapse Studio from Synapse Workspace. And we will also learn how to create linked services in Synapse Studio. So I will log into both AWS and Azure accounts now. I will start with creating a bucket in AWS. I logged into both AWS and Azure accounts here, if you see on my screen. Now I will go to services in AWS console, and I will look for S3. Just say in the search S3, and you will see that scalable storage in the cloud. Click on S3. Now here we can see all the options here, the pricing and tutorials, and store and retrieve any amount of data from anywhere. So on the right side, we see option create bucket. I will click on create bucket, and we need to select a unique name for this bucket. So I will say this is AWS to Azure account 01. So we just need to maintain a unique name for our bucket. But if you are doing this exercise for your organizations, and please follow the standards and the naming policies. And the next step is, I think this bucket name is available in Amazon S3. And I will select the region as US East, North Virginia, US East 1. And object ownership, so ACLs disabled, it is recommended. So I will just select the default one. So block all public access. This is required so that others, they don't access bucket, but for now I'll just disable it. But it doesn't matter, you can enable or you can disable. So we will use a access key and a secret to connect to this S3 bucket from Synapse Studio. So I acknowledge that the settings might result in this bucket and the objects within becoming public. So I'm aware of it, and I will skip the tag. And next one, default encryption disable. So everything looks good here, and I will create a bucket. My bucket is created in Amazon S3. Now I need to go to this bucket, and no files available. We just created this bucket. So I will click on upload. And here we see option add files. Click on add files. And here I have a number of sample data files available. So for this exercise, I will just use the air travel data, and I will upload this air travel data into Amazon S3 bucket. And everything looks good here. Here we can see that size 238 byte, and this is the text CSV. And everything looks good, and upload this file. So now my file is uploaded in Amazon S3 bucket. So now I will go back to buckets. So I will go back to buckets, and this is my bucket name, AWS to Azure account 01. Click on that bucket, and this is the file that I just uploaded. Let's click on that file and see what's inside. Let me try to open this. I'm just opening this file and see what we have in this file. So we have the data that month and year 1958, 1959, and 1960. This is number of passengers travel in this year and in this month. So now our goal is to copy this data from this Amazon S3 and move it to Azure ADLS. So let me log into Azure portal. I already logged into Azure portal. Now I need to create a Synapse workspace. So I will go to first. I will just say Synapse. Here we see under the services, Azure Synapse Analytics. Click on Azure Synapse Analytics and click on create. So now here we need to create a resource group. I'll say RG01, my resource group name. And we need manage resource group. I will say managed RG01. And this is available. I need to enter a workspace name, unique workspace name. I will say this is the Synapse account 01. And all the validations completed. It looks good. It is available. And region, I will select East US2. And account name, I need to select a ADLS account. I will create a ADLS account. I will say Azure storage account 01. So this is available. I will create this name and I need to create a file name. I will say this is account file 01. And everything looks good here. So I will move to next tab and security. And I need to enter a password. And we need to remember this password because we need to log into Synapse Studio and we can perform all the admin operations using this ID. But in this module, we are just copying data from AWS S3 into ADLS. So we don't log into Synapse Studio. But in my next modules, I will show you how to copy data and load it into Synapse table. Everything looks good here, networking. And I will go to next tab and manage virtual network disable. I will leave everything default here and move it to review plus create. And it is validating. And once validation is success, and here we can see the price. Serverless SQL estimated cost $5. And region, we can see resource group name. And I will create the Synapse workspace. It takes a few minutes to deploy this service. So while this deployment in progress, I will go back to AWS Management Console, and I'm here in my bucket in Amazon S3, and I need to create an access key and secret. So how do we do that? So to create access key and secret, and we need to allow Azure to access this Amazon S3. So I will go to our right side, top of the screen, and under the username, we see security credentials. Click on security credentials. And now we are in identity and access management page. And on your left, you see access management. And under access management, select users. So now on your right side, you see option add users. click on add users. Now I need to give a username here. I will say Azure account 01, and everything looks good here. And select access key, programmatic access, and go to permissions and attach existing policies directly. Select attach existing policies directly. And here we want Azure to access only our Amazon S3 bucket. So we make sure Azure doesn't access the other services in AWS. Now I will go to search and just enter S3. And here we can see that at the second option, Amazon S3 full access. I will select that option and click on next and click on review. So everything looks good here. Username, AWS access type, programmatic access with an access key, and permissions boundary is not set. Okay, so I will create this user. So now I created a user. Now I can use this access key ID and the secret access key to connect from Azure Synapse Studio. So let me go back to Azure portal and see deployment is in progress. So let me go back to home and go to resource group and see what we have. Click on resource group. Yes, everything is available here. I know it still shows deployment in progress, but I will click on Synapse Workspace. And before I go to Synapse Workspace, let me just go to storage account and we go to containers. So here we already created a container during the deployment account file 01. Okay, so now I'll go back to resource group and click on Synapse Workspace. And here you can see that open Synapse Studio. So Microsoft introduced this option a few months back. So now we can do everything using Synapse Studio, or you can use Data Factory. So a year back, I did a module how to copy data from AWS S3 into Azure Blob, but this is a different. I didn't cover in my earlier video modules that how to create S3 bucket and how to create access key and security credential to authorize Azure to connect to AWS S3. So a lot of people asked me to cover that in my upcoming video module. So now in this module, I covered how to create, how to give access to Azure. And here in this module, we're using Synapse Studio to copy data. And also our destination is ADLS Gen 2. So now let me open this Synapse Studio. So now I'm in Azure Synapse Studio. Now I need to go to a pipeline. I can also use ingest a one-time activity, but I want to show you guys how to create a pipeline and how to establish a linker service and how to publish them. And I will cover everything in this module. And to create a pipeline, and here click on this drop down, click on this plus icon, and we see options, pipeline. Click on pipeline. Now I need to give a name to my pipeline. I will say AWS copy AWS to ADLS. And the description I will say copy data from Amazon S3 into Azure ADLS. Now I will use a copy activity to copy data from S3 to ADLS. So under the activities and go to search, just type copy and we see that copy data activity and drag it here. Now we need to select a name for this copy I'll say copy from AWS S3 into ADLS. And everything looks good here, and description we already entered in the pipeline. But if you want to enter again, you can enter at the activity level and the timeout and retry attempts. You can also put one or two if if you want, if any reason if the connection fails, it will retry again. You can put one or two, and you can set this retry interval anything 30 seconds or 1 minute. It's up to you. 30 minutes. So now I will go to next one, the source. Here in this exercise, our source is Amazon S3. So now I need to create a new linker service, and here I need to select a data store. My data store is Amazon S3. Continue and choose the format type of our data. I will select delimited text, and I will say this is air travel data, and I will say AWS S3, and I don't have any link services available. So let me create a link service. So I will say this is Amazon S3, a link service. This is my source, a link service. And authentication type, I will use access key, or you can use a temporary security credentials also to connect to Amazon S3. Now, what I will do, I will go to AWS portal and copy the access key, and I will go to a secret key and copy that secret access key. Let's see if everything is copied. I don't think so. I think I need to open and select and come here and enter the secret access key. Now I should be able to connect. So now my connection is successful. My source connection is successful. I will create this linker service. After creating this source linker service, I need to select a file bucket and the file which I want to bring from S3 into ADLS. So select this bucket and select the file that you want to copy from S3. So now I selected file and everything looks good here. My source looks good, and here you can use all these options if you want, but I will move it to sync. I will move to sync and I will click on create. So here in this exercise, our target is ADLS Gen 2. So here you can see that I selected data store, and you can see that Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Select that ADLS Gen 2 and select the file format, delimited text, and select this file name as travel data, and select the linker service. And we don't have any linker service. I will create one, and I will name this as ADLS Gen 2. This is ADLS Gen 2 linker service. And everything looks good here. And account key and subscription and storage account name. We already have one storage account, Azure storage account 01, and test the connection. Looks good, connection successful, and click on create. So now my source and sync are linked services are successful. That means I can bring the data from source to target. But before we run the activity, I will go to file path, and I need to select the destination for this file to land in ADLS. So I select the container account file 01 and click on OK. So now I completed my source and sink activities, and mapping, if you want, you can do it, but since we're just landing into a storage account, so we don't need mapping. And we can do in two ways here. Either I can publish all these, or I can run a debug and see if there are any errors. But let me run this in debug and see if there are any errors. Now the activity is running, and you can see it here. Just click on refresh and copy from AWS S3 into ADLS, and the activity that we are using, copy data and the status in progress. So here we can select what is coming from the input. So you see that AWS S3 and delimited text, everything looks good here. And also, yeah, this activity is completed. I will move into the ADLS in a few minutes. I'll show you. So the data read 238, data written 238, everything looks good here, and close. And I will click on this copy activity. Amazon S3 into ADLS Gen 2. It succeeded, and files read 1, files written 1. And here you can see that how long it took, like 5 seconds total duration, in queue is 5, and transfer to 2 seconds. Okay, I will close this, and here you can see that including queue, transfer, everything, it took 11 seconds to copy that file from Azure ADLS, from S3 into ADLS. So now I will go back to storage account and see if I received file in my storage account from Amazon S3. Click on containers, click on container, and here is the file atravel.csv that I received in my ADLS account. Click on this file and see if the data is there. As I see the data, month, year 1958, 59, 96. Everything is available, and the activity is successful, and you can publish them. If you want to keep these changes, you can publish. And here you can see that the pipeline is, we name this pipeline copy AWS to ADLS, and the data sets we created, these two data sets, and publish them. So in this module, we learn what we learn, like, I showed you guys how to create AWS S3 bucket, and how to load our data into AWS S3, and how to give permissions to Azure to connect to S3 to copy data from S3 into Azure ADLS account. Here you can see that, click on S3, we have files. And we also learn how to deploy Azure Synapse workspace using Azure portal, and how to open the Synapse Studio, and how do we create a pipeline in Synapse Studio, and what activity we use. We use the copy activity to do this exercise. And we also learn, like, how to select our source file path while we creating linked service, and also our target file path while we create linked service. We also learn how to create linked services in this exercise. If you have any questions on creating S3 bucket or uploading files in Amazon S3, or create permissions or create access, a key or secret key in Amazon S3. And also, if you have any questions, like, deploying a Synapse workspace through Azure portal, or opening up Synapse Studio, or create a pipeline in Synapse Studio, or creating linked services, or copying data from S3 to this ADLS, and please feel free to post all your questions in the comments section. I will try to reply as soon as possible. And if you like this video, please subscribe and share the channel. Thank you.